Subscribe to The Honest Critique for current affairs, movie, book, and product reviews. Also, make sure you press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the video series are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily represent those of The Honest Critique and its employees. The following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers. Viewer discretion advised.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode we are recording today. I'm joined by Daniel Ayalon, who is an Israeli diplomat, columnist, and a politician. He served as the deputy foreign minister and a member of the Knesset. He was the Israeli ambassador of the United States from 2002 to 2006. So thank you so much, sir, for taking your time and speaking to us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So I want to start by asking you, the premise of the question is last week what we have seen. We have seen a ray of diplomatic support and international support that Israel has managed to get, a fair share from America, where President Biden actually came in full support with one of the best speeches that we've heard in a long time, rallying in support for Israel. And then we saw the Secretary of State coming and talking about his Jewish identity. So how do you look at the first reaction of America when the Hamas attack actually took place?
Well, I think this is heartwarming, inspiring to see the very quick and effective response of the United States of America as indeed the leader of the free world. And what we saw from President Biden is nothing less than a Churchillian moment, just like in World War II. You had to confront evil with all the might and everything you have. And at the end of the day, we, the free world, defeated Nazism. Now it's the same kind of moment to defeat ISIS, Hamas, and the Islamist jihadist movement, which is all about destruction. And we're talking about this global jihad movement, which has been sponsored, financed, inspired by the Ayatollahs in Iran. We have to understand, we have the people of Iran are held hostage. Actually, they were kidnapped in a way in their own country by a regime which is the most nefarious regime, not different than the Nazis. Now, the Iranian regime is very conniving in the sense that they are not confronting outright with their own personnel, but they're using proxies. And they are willing to fight till the last of their proxies, whether it's the Islamic Jihad in Gaza, whether it's the Hezbollah in Lebanon, whether these are the Houthis in Yemen, or the Iranian militias in Syria, in Iraq, in Libya, and Sudan, even Nigeria, the Boko Jihad. And this is where it is important to recognize that, unfortunately, there is no coexistence with them. It's not that because we do not want to coexist with them, they do not want to coexist with us. For them, it's do or die, all or nothing. They like to see a world which is a Sharia world, Caliphate, starting in the Middle East, but much beyond. If you look at the map of the Middle East, it's a vast area where Israel makes only 1/3 of 1% of the entire territory. But if you look at the strategic location of Israel, we are like the cork on top of this huge bottle. And this cork of Israel is stopping this jihadist to just pour out and gush out and take over first Europe across the Mediterranean, and then America, and also to the east. So this is why they are using all the attacks against Israel. They understand that Israel is the dam that actually protects the Western world and the democratic world. And in that sense, we look up to India. India is the greatest democracy on the face of the earth, and not only in terms of numbers of the population, but also in the ethos, in the history, and also in the Pacific nature of the people. So this is what we have now. It's a very clear divide between the American-led coalition, where we have, of course, India and South Korea and Japan, and of course the European countries and Israel and Australia. This is one side. And on the other side, we have China and Russia, and they're backing Iran and all these jihadist movements. Now, the enigma is, where are the Arab countries, the Sunni moderate regimes, be it in Jordan or Egypt or Saudi Arabia, or all the countries Israel have peace with, Morocco and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain? Well, they're not speaking up because they are afraid. This global jihadist movement is as much their enemies as it is ours. And they would like to take all those moderate regimes and turn them into a Sharia state like Caliphate. They are not speaking up because they are afraid that their own people, will turn against them. The global jihadist movement and the Palestinians in particular are embedded in their own population, whether it's in Cairo or in Amman in Jordan and anywhere else in the Middle East. This is why they're very careful, because if they speak up, they're afraid that the people will just come and demonstrate against them in a way that it was done back in what was euphemistically called the Arab Spring.
And this is actually what I wanted to ask you next, that we have seen America's growing, it's growing less important actually day by day in the Middle East. The way it had hold in the Middle East, it's growing day by day lesser and lesser. At this point, Biden's visit to Israel, was it just not for the solidarity, but also to show that it's one of the places that it wants to still have a stronghold in the Middle East?
Absolutely. For Mr. Biden and for the United States, it's not just an emotional matter. It's also a very cold and calculated survival matter and strategic thinking. And they know, Israel at this point is the only democracy in the Middle East. They understand in America that if the Middle East is to survive, and if the people of the Middle East are to survive, they must turn democratic. It's not going to be overnight, but we know from history that only true democracies can face up to cruelty, to dictatorship, and to global senseless jihadist movement. It's not going to be, as I said, easy, but the support to Israel is first and foremost to deter any other enemies, whether it's Iran or Hezbollah, to join the attack. Hence, the Americans not only sent very clear warning against Iran, but also to corroborate that, they sent 2 strike forces with 2 aircraft carriers, the Gerald Ford and the Eisenhower, which are now situated in the eastern basin of the Middle East, basically outside the territorial waters of Lebanon, with their eyes, and everything they have is aimed at Hezbollah if they act up, and towards Iran. And they understand what we have here at stake in the Middle East is it the Iran way that is going to prevail, and then the entire Middle East is going into a chaotic situation with a huge base of terrorism like Al-Qaeda, like ISIS, or is it going to be the Israel way, the democratic way? This is why now it's a moment of truth for the Middle East and for the entire world. And this is why the United States has risen up to the task, and they put everything they have, because they know this is the time to shore up and support their allies and to deflect any attacks from our enemies.
Yes, sir. And I wanted to understand now about your perception. how was President Biden's visit yesterday? I mean, he made a number of statements, and some of them probably, I'm sure they were closed on negotiations. Especially, I want to understand about the humanitarian assistance that was actually finally agreed upon. Of course, it was emergency, but still, it was agreed upon to a certain degree between Israel and the United States. The second thing I want to understand is about how he reacted to the hospital blast, which is very critical because he didn't use the word Islamic Jihad who carried out the attacks. He used the word other team, in fact, which is surprising for me because he should have called out there. And he mentioned one more thing, which I want to ask you, is that holding Gaza for the long time will not be beneficial for Israel. So could you tell about these 3 points?
Sure. So the understanding with the United States, and we're on the same page, is that Hamas has to be eliminated, just like the Nazis were eliminated, just like ISIS was eliminated. And in order to do that, we need to go into Gaza and take them out. Unfortunately, they're dug in. They built a whole underground city of Gaza, actually taking away all the humanitarian material, all the cement and metals that was sent to Gaza to build homes for the Palestinians. They took it to build their own bunkers and underground tunnels. This is why there will be no escape from going into a ground operation. This is the only way to root them out. And right now we have their leaders are just dug in a bunker, the same way that Hitler of the Nazis in 1945 was dug in his bunker. And until the Allied forces got into his bunker, he kept fighting. The same thing here. We'll have to get into their bunkers unless they unconditionally surrender, but I don't think they will. So this is the first message and the first understanding that we have with Biden and the Americans, that we'll have to go in and do away with Hamas. The second one is, of course, caring for the civilian population, which is not involved with Hamas. Granted, most of them are again held hostage by Hamas. With them, they need humanitarian aid, but so far, the first humanitarian aid that was sent to them through UNRWA, this is a United Nations Work and Relief Agency, whatever was sent to them, including 25,000 liters of gasoline, was stolen and taken by Hamas. So the agreement now is that, yes, we should allow in humanitarian aid for the population. But if we see that Hamas is taking over, we will have to prevent that. We also want to actually ask them to move fighting area. That means towards the Sinai border. This is the only way where they can find some refuge. And when they do that, it will be much easier for Israel Defense Forces to go in and not to worry about collateral damage and about hitting unarmed. So the Hamas, of course, is trying to prevent that. And they are threatening any Gazan, any Palestinian who wants to leave the urban areas of Gaza City and move towards the Sinai. They are trying to intimidate them and to prevent them from going. I don't think that this will go for the long run, because at the end of the day, they cannot keep hundreds of thousands of people. Once a stampede starts, I don't think that they can stop that. So this is the second thing that we agreed upon, which is to help as much as we can to alleviate the humanitarian condition for the Gaza people. Again, with this caveat that we have to watch that it's not going to the Hamas, whatever is going to be sent there. And the Egyptians are going to send quite a few trucks tomorrow with humanitarian and medical supplies and all that. Now, we have the issue of refugees, which is also, they're not refugees, sorry, the issue of the hostages. And with the issue of hostages, and here it's really a crime against humanity, because the Hamas terrorists not only killed babies and slaughtered them and maimed them and butchered them and buried them and burned them alive, they took many of them, including 85-year-old ladies and old men and babies. They took them hostages into Gaza. We, of course, demand their unconditional release, because this is another crime against humanity that they perpetrate, Hamas. There are about 20 or so nations involved, that their citizens now are in the hands of Hamas. Here, this is where the Red Cross, International Red Cross, and other human rights and relief organizations should and are trying to get to Hamas to release them. If this is not enough, there will have to be also a political pressure. And here, the main ally of Hamas is Qatar. Qatar has a lot of money. They have a lot of leverage. So also, the other countries, European countries, are putting the pressure on Qatar. So they put the pressure on Hamas to release the hostages.
Yes, sir. And for some of our viewers who might be a little confused about the humanitarian part, I wanted to understand there was a Security Council meeting yesterday, and Brazil brought in a proposal for humanitarian assistance to Gaza, and US vetoed it. On the other hand, we saw President Biden actually pushing for the humanitarian assistance when he visited Israel. So, what's this confusion about? If you could talk, tell us viewers about it.
Yeah, well, there should be a confusion, because Israel also doesn't want to see any civil population in dire straits and suffering. So, of course, we are helping with the Egyptians to push tomorrow convoys and trucks of humanitarian and medical supplies, humanitarian aid. The only concern is, and this is where we have to keep very watchful eyes, that this is not going to the Hamas, trying to deprive all those things from the civil populations. And if they do, then we'll have to take care of this and make supplies.
Now, coming to the visit of actually Rishi Sunak, we saw Prime Minister Sunak also made a visit today, and he also followed the US counterparts' footsteps and expressed solidarity. Take us through how was that visit also important, because the UK, like the US, also has a fair significant of Jewish population.
Yes, well, the UK is a very respected and very important player in the state in this democratic world alliance. So it is very important that they come here also for solidarity and also for understanding what's happening here, and also how to work together, because it will take a coalition, just like it took a coalition of the Allies to finish with the Nazis. We will need a coalition of every able and willing state, and mostly democratic states, to pull together their resources, everything that we can have to stop it. Because the battle, unfortunately, is right now only supposedly in Gaza, but the war is all over the world. And this is the prize that the jihadists want to take. And this is where we have to make sure that they will never be able to do that. And first and foremost, we have to take all the jihadists straight on and heads on. This is the Hamas, ISIS, this is the Hezbollah, this is the Houthis and all those. But at the end of the day, we also will have to take care of the countries that host them and support them, like Iran, for instance. And here I hope that the countries that give a lot of support to Iran, and mainly it's China and Russia, will also recalculate and reconsider and reevaluate and reassess, because it is very important that they also isolate and marginalize the Ayatollahs in Iran to the extent that we will see a new democratic regime coming into Iran, freeing the people from the terror of the Ayatollahs and also stopping the support that the Ayatollahs give to all the terror organizations worldwide. And lastly, which is also very important, is to stop altogether and dismantle the Iranians' illegal nuclear program. They're still moving ahead with that. And for Iran, for the Ayatollahs of Iran, we have to remember that the nuclear capability is not the end goal. It's only the means to be able to intimidate further and to actually reach hegemony and control of the entire Middle East and beyond. So this is where we need to understand that this is the big picture, and it's just not just taking out Hamas or ISIS or Hezbollah, but also making sure that the Iranians, Ayatollahs, will never be in a position to support terror, to subvert the moderate regimes in the Middle East, and to develop nuclear weapons.
So the last thing that I wanted to ask you is, we have seen what the conversation has been when the war with Ukraine started, Russia's war with Ukraine started. And after a year or so, there has been a certain sense of a war fatigue. And we have seen conversations that they want to cut military aids. And it was difficult for President Biden to actually rally support. Now the war with Israel, when the war with Hamas started, Israel has got a lot of support from both the Republicans and the Democrats. But how long can this support be actually rallied from both the sides before the conversation on cutting military aid? Because a significant proportion of the Israel artillery, including the Iron Domes, actually depends on US funds. Actually.
Well, the bipartisan support of Israel is a natural thing. The alliance between Israel and the United States is a natural alliance based on our history and ethos and democratic values, but also on our interests and the threats that we all face. You know that the Ayatollahs in Iran, they call Israel the little Satan, and the big Satan is the United States. So we are all here together. I believe that the bipartisan support will continue, and I think that what the president will try to do, especially as the United States is approaching very soon an election year, will try to actually extend and enlarge the bipartisan support, not just to Israel, but also to other issues, political issues in the United States, so that the American society will not be as polarized as it had been under two administrations that were pretty much on the two opposite divides. You know, we had the Obama administration from the very left, we had the Trump from the very right, and here comes Biden from the center, and maybe he has a chance to actually galvanize support, not just for Israel, which is very, very palpable, but also support for a America which will be much more united.
It's not super related to the war, but we have a huge amount of Jewish diaspora both in UK and US. And as President Biden was here, we have seen the Capitol building been stormed off with slurs of anti-Israel and by the pro-Palestinian groups. We've also seen actually in UK scores and thousands of people who were gathering with chants for anti-Israel chants. I'm sure this was a conversation that could take place on a later day, especially with the war with Hamas going. But I'm sure with the huge amount of Jewish diaspora and the anti-Semitic, we have seen of pictures coming from Berlin of how anti-Semitism has still been persisting. And yesterday we saw a synagogue in Tunisia being stormed off. I'm sure this conversation will happen in private, where Prime Minister Netanyahu will engage either Prime Minister Rishi Sunak or President Biden to have this conversation.
Absolutely. What we see, unfortunately, that the Hamas and other Islamist movements, what they're doing is they are really inciting the population. They are using latent propaganda, and unfortunately, sometimes they brainwash some young minds who do not know history, who do not understand politics, and they're being fooled by this Hamas or by these Palestinian leaders. And when I see these rallies of support to Hamas, like ISIS, is appalling. Most of them are Muslims. You know, in Europe today, including in the United Kingdom, there are quite a number of Muslim immigrants who came into and got naturalized, but they kept actually loyal, not to the host country, to their new countries, but to Islam. We saw it in the decapitation of British policemen just a few years back. There was a Pakistani Muslim who decapitated a policeman. Now, this Pakistani Muslim was born in England. He was third generation. He was British. But the problem is that instead of accepting the new countries they're in, that they took them, they still adhere to jihadist Islam. This is the main problem that we see. It's not just in Europe, it's also in the United States. And when you see all these manifestations of support to Hamas or to the Islam or to the Palestinian cause, mostly they are Muslims, but there are also non-Muslims there, and they are just gullible, mostly young people who are being used as useful idiots by the radical Islam because they don't know much. So either they are just ignorant or they're brainwashed. Otherwise, you cannot explain why they would go and turn against their own morality, against their own, I would say, their own history and civilization. That much.
Well, so that's all the question that I had. Thank you so much, sir, for taking your time and speaking to us.
Thank you very much, and be well. And again, I want to extend through you to all the great people of India our respect, and we really feel that we are in the same camp. Yes, we will come victorious because good always wins over evil. And I know that there is great cooperation now between the governments and the people of India and in Israel on many, many, many aspects, technology and military and economy. And I think things are moving quite well.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much once again, sir. Have a great day.